اشاره کنم.
I'd like to refer to the 1988 massacres in which Raisi was present. I'd like to say, first of all, hello. I would like to speak about the massacre of political prisoners in Gohardash prison, where I was at that time, and Raisi was there as well. In Gohardash prison on Saturday, 29th of August, 1988, the massacre started. 2 days before that, on Thursday night, I and a few other prisoners were summoned. We were asked what was our charge. We said we are supporters of the Mujahideen, the MEK. The guards brutally beat us so that my ribs as well as my thumb was broken. We were then sent back to the ward and told us that they would come back for us on Saturday. On Saturday, they called the same names, but they took my brother Reza Zand by mistake instead of me. And he was in prison with me at that time, and he was sitting next to me at that time. And this is the picture of my brother, Reza Zand, who was taken instead of me. A few days later, they took me out of the main ward and put me into another cell. On August 6, 1988, we were taken to the death squad, to the death commission. At that death commission was Ibrahim Raisi and Hossein Nayyeri and Mostafa Pour-Mohammadi and Morteza Eshraghi, who were members of the death commission. Of course, at that time, I did not know Raisi, Ibrahim Raisi, but later I found out this was the same person who was the henchman of the 1988 massacre. When I saw his picture, I realized this. The death commission informed me that they had executed my brother. Outside in the corridor of death, I saw a prisoner called Nasser Mansouri, who was on a stretcher. In order to keep the information about the operational structure inside the prison, Nasser Mansouri, because he was under torture, had thrown himself from the second floor, and this had caused his spinal cord injuries so that he couldn't move. And he had not died, but he couldn't move. Raisi and the rest of the criminals had no mercy on him. They issued his death sentence. And Mahmoud Zaki was another person who went in front of the same death commission. And Raisi was a member of that death commission. I asked Muhammad when he came outside after the hearing, what happened? He replied, I told him that I am from the MEK, I was a sympathizer, and they told me that your sentence is death, and they took him to the gallows. They had all sentences from the courts of this very regime, but in other words, they were serving their sentences, but they had crossed the red line by saying that they were supporters of the MEK still. And so Raisi and the other criminal members of this death commission had only one objective, and that was to kill more and more of the MEK sympathizers. And I appeared before the death commission myself 3 times, and Raisi was there as well. Let me tell you about Behzad Ramzi Ismaili. He was an international badminton referee. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He had been arrested before June 20th, 1981. During the period that prisoners were transferred to various prisons for the massacre in preparation for it, Behzad was also transferred to Evin, from Evin to Gohardash prison. He was executed during the 1988 massacre. Behzad's father died of a heart attack after hearing the news of Behzad's execution. Parviz Sharifi was also one of our family friends. He was executed in Evin. Parviz's parents suffered from severe depression, in a state of mourning all the time for their son. They took my father to Evin to asked him to bring Reza's ID card. So my own father, after my brother was executed, was summoned to Evin prison. And they had told him on the telephone to bring Reza's ID card. My father went to Evin. He was then presented the ID, and then they wanted to take the ID to annul it. But he said that I have this ID, but I will not give it to you. And they said it's not important. But they said if you don't give the ID card, we will not tell you where he is buried. And he said he's in my heart. And so they blindfold him. They do 3 times execution, acting out as if they were going to execute my father. And they tell him, they give him a bag, a few pieces of clothing, and a shredded watch. And then they tell him, you are not allowed to mourn for your son. You're not allowed to hold a ceremony or a memorial. And so at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the watch on Reza's watch had stopped. And so my father knew that that was about the time that he had broken his watch to prevent it to be taken by the guards. My father did not succumb to the guards. My father always wanted revenge for my son, for his son's execution. And he hoped that this regime would be overthrown and the people would be free, and this would be his revenge.